once I've had a petite chapeau. Hey everybody, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, with the Fingerdoo review of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 3, Episode 2. And before we get started, because there's a lot to talk about this week, I just want to thank some tipper dues. Hey Marcia, thanks so much for telling me how much you're appreciating my efforts in keeping the RuPaul Drag Race fandom entertained. You know it's my pleasure, doll, seriously. And a huge big Fingerdoo hello to Vito Bacuzzi, who not only dropped by to share some love, but to let me know that he got his sister Lucy to subscribe to my channel. Hey Lucy, welcome to the Fingerdoo family, and thank you Vito, seriously. Also, Kevin from Boston dropped by with some extra love this week as well, and to tell me how stunning I look. Well, Kevin, thanks doll, seriously. And finally, Marsha Hullen popped by as well to say she can't wait to watch Season 3 with me. I'm so happy you're able to join, Marsha. Seriously, so far so good for Season 3, but let's not jinx it. If you'd like to support my channel by becoming a tipper do, the link is down below in the description box, as are links to my Redbubble shop, my Patreon page, and while you're down there, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and to subscribe to my channel like Vito's sister Lucy did, if you haven't already. Now, Jorge, drink me! Ooh. Is there anything? What is this? Just water? With a lot of gin. It's a lovely gin and tonic. Are we saying goodbye to the warm days of summer? Because you know they'll be back at the end of October, I'm just saying. Delish. Okay, so let's get to it. Well, it was a sobering start to the new week as the remaining queens bid the first farewell to the lovely Anubis. But it was also a wake-up call as they all realized that Crystal was setting a very high bar, I'm just saying. In other news, it seemed that Victoria had hurt her knee during the lip sync. I have to say, I thought she looked like she was having a bit of trouble walking after it, but it didn't seem too serious. But Victoria assured the room that the swelling was already going down and that she had no intention of going home this early in the game, even though Veronica asked her if she was worried about her injury taking her out. Cheeky. I don't know why, but I thought it was awfully shady of Ronnie to ask such a thing. Anyone else? As the Queens de-drag, Crystal made a big show of letting the Queens know her RuPeter badge was weighing her down, even though she didn't actually have it yet. But the damage was done. The other Queens, including Victoria, were eyeing Crystal as a threat. And that's never a good thing, I'm so serious. The next day in the workroom, it was clear that a good night's sleep had done nothing to calm Crystal's tits. She was still crowing about her win, and she couldn't wait to build up her collection. Needless to say, the other queens thought she was a hoot and loved her all the more for it. Not surprisingly, Veronica was even greener with envy, but thankfully had left that green makeup home. Too bad she hadn't done the same with that rugby crop top. Please don't tell me that's a thing. The important question was how Victoria's leg was going. Apparently the swelling was already gone, but she'd been advised to stay off her leg and out of heels for as much as possible. Not to jinx anything, but I'm getting memories of Eureka all over again. What is it with Drag Race and knees? Seriously. Thankfully, Ru's video message brought them back to the here and now. Probably because all she seemed to talk about was sweaty balls. I mean, that's mostly what I heard. But before the queens could get too excited, there was Ru, but instead of a mini challenge, she had a task for Crystal. As last week's winner, she was tasked to give an all-tea, no-shade assessment of the other queens by playing Rupert Market sweeps. Crystal had to find special price stickers in the Rupert Market and assign them to the queens. The star buy was meant to go to whomever Crystal thought was her biggest competition. Rightfully so, she chose Victoria, not because she was the biggest competition, but because she was literally the biggest competition. Crystal's lucky I wasn't there, because I would have slapped that filler out of her smug little face. Vicky seemed to have the same idea, I'm so serious. The bargain bin sticker was meant for the queen with the trashiest taste. Crystal gave that one to River Medway. Bless. The hot ticket sticker was for the trade of the season. Apparently, that's Elle of a Day. Was there a runner-up? The out-of-date sticker was for the most irrelevant queen. Apparently, that was Veronica Green. Not that I'm arguing against it, but as Ronnie herself said, it's very, very harsh. Finally came the buy one, get one free sticker for the queen Crystal thought would be the next one eliminated. She chose Elektra, poor thing, but in Crystal's defense, Elektra was in the bottom last week. I'm just saying. Speaking of Crystal's defense, and not because she needs defending, but what the hell was the point of all that? 10 queens to choose from and only 5 stickers, and only 2 of those stickers didn't suck? Although Crystal pooed all over the biggest competition sticker, if you ask me. Clearly production wanted to ruffle some feathers and freak a few queens out. I thought at least the stickers would separate the queens into teams or something, but no. In production's defense, Crystal was very rude when it came to explaining how she chose who got what. Calling Victoria fat, which is exactly what she did, didn't sit well with anyone. Neither did calling Veronica old. Do I think Ronnie didn't deserve that sticker? Well, no, she is the oldest in the room. But I'm glad Ru told Crystal to watch the age discrimination. Seriously. As for River and Elektra, Crystal's glib reasoning did nothing to win friends and influence people. Neither did that Ru badge, I'm just saying. Honestly, I didn't see the point in any of this because without any more discussion, Ru moved into this week's Maxi Challenge, Draggaton. The queens would be spoofing the online Peloton fitness craze by being fitness instructors. And for this, Ru separated the queens into 3 groups, each with their own fitness program to perform. Charitza May, Vanity Milan, and Elektra Fence were group Ride or Die, teaching a spinning class. Crystal Versace, River Medway, Veronica Green, and Kitty Scott Claus were team Ballbusters, working with exercise balls. And finally, Charity Case, Victoria Scone, Scarlet Harlot, and Elle of a Day were team Baby Sizers, which were basically yummy mummies working out with their babies. Sounds like fun. Without hesitation, the queens got down to work in their teams. Well, that's not true. The first thing the Ballbusters did was ask Crystal about her Rupert Market sticker choices. Clearly, Ronnie was upset at being called old by a 19-year-old. Hell, yesterday is old to a 19-year-old, but at 35, Ronnie, as I said, is the oldest in the workroom, and hey, they didn't harp on it too long. Maybe Ronnie forgot what they were talking about. Bless. I do have to say, though, for someone whose nose was clearly put out of joint by Crystal's burn, Ronnie seemed quite happy to judge River for her lack of, well, anything, I'm guessing. At least Ronnie had the grace to do that behind her back. Just saying. Also, I was impressed that Crystal thought she was going to be the weakest on her team. So clearly, she's not totally delusional. Over on Team Baby Sizers, Charity was clearly worried about her lack of choreography experience, especially since Victoria and Ella went to the same dance school. While over on Team Ride or Die, Elektra was confident that this challenge had her name written all over it. Or maybe she was just hell-bent on showing Crystal she was wrong in saying she'd go home next, while poor Charitza was worried about moving the body her mom gave her. Bless. That's when Ru dropped back in to see how the queens were getting on. First, she visited with the Ballbusters, but they didn't talk very much about the challenge. It was more about Crystal's choices. Sounds like a Hallmark movie of the week, Crystal's choices. As they rehashed what had already been hashed, you could see Crystal was starting to regret her choices. Maybe that's the sequel, Crystal's Regrets. When the Baby Sizers came over for their chat, Ru seemed more interested in talking to Victoria about being called fat by Crystal. You could clearly see this was starting to get on Crystal's nerves as more and more of the queens she'd shaded were questioned. Thankfully, Ru moved on by asking the rest of the team what they were going to bring to the challenge to stand out. Charity said she could do accents, including an American one, but when she put it on for Ru, let's just say, there are no American actors in Britain worried about losing an audition to Charity Case anytime soon. Lastly, Team Ride or Die met with Ru, and right away, Charitza was outed as the only non-dancer in the group, but her teammates assured Ru that they had her back. Because she was in the bottom last week, Ru wanted to know what Elektra had planned to stay out of the bottom this week. As per usual, when Ru asked this question of the queens, who are clearly struggling, Elektra had nothing. She's lucky she's cute is all I'm saying. And then it was on to choreography with star of Strictly Come Dancing and Germany's Let's Dance, Latin American dance champion Odi Mabuse. You could see why she was the professional winner of Strictly season 18 and 19, because she put those queens through one of the toughest routines of Drag Race history. The only thing tougher has to be watching Veronica Green rehearsing whatever this was. Never mind Ronnie's tuppence. I think I saw her Piccadilly Circus. The queens who seemed to have issues were, well, Vicky and her knee, Natch, but she put on a brave face. Scarlett and Charity seemed to have their work cut out for them, and poor Choriza always seemed to end up facing the wrong way. But the queen who seemed to have the most trouble was Miss Sales Sticker herself, Crystal, and everyone seemed okay with that. The next day in the workroom, the queens were all worried about their choreo for the Maxi Challenge, but none more than Crystal Versace. Victoria's knee seemed to be feeling it after their rigorous rehearsal, but no matter how worried she seemed, she was going to give them a show from the waist up. Sounds dirty. As they got their slap on, Victoria had a much-needed heart-to-heart with Crystal about her inadvertently calling her big. Okay, fat. She called her fat. In her defense, Crystal apologized by saying that she was caught up in the moment of being shady and that she's not about bringing people down. Okay, let me start this off by saying Crystal's 19, and no, that's not an excuse, but it is a reason on two levels. Firstly, Crystal's in a room full of adults, mostly, who've had way more experiences with life lessons than she has. Not that that means those same adults are better at being funny, but their life experiences, in most part, keep them from going too far in most situations. One hopes. Secondly, where the other stickers were concerned, Crystal wasn't wrong. River's drag was the trashiest as far as last week's runway was concerned, and seeing how Elektra was in the bottom on week one, she was an obvious choice for the next one to go home. Hell, I would have picked her, I'm just saying. As far as Ella being the trait of the season, well, Ella wasn't mad at that, but you could tell that there were a few who got their noses out of joint for not getting that sticker. And from what Ronnie showed us with her entrance and runway last week, she is the most out-of-date queen there so far. But then I fear Veronica Green could take offense at the wind-changing direction, so I don't think we can blame Crystal for that. Calling her old, on the other hand, which is the hand I'd use to smack her down if she called me old, I'm just saying, is where Crystal took that sticker too far. Just saying. This hand! I also want to commend Victoria for taking such a civilized route in talking to Crystal about it. I feel if Victoria had attacked or accused her, it would have just got Crystal's dander up and made the whole situation worse. But, as it was, Victoria's calm approach allowed Crystal to hear what she was saying and then to make a heartfelt apology. Here's to everyone. See? Children can be taught. I also want to thank Victoria for so eloquently sharing her history of judging and hating her own body. I went to dance school too, and was by far the fattest one there, and standing in front of those mirrors all day in leotards does nothing to help that. Plus, I'm 6'4", even slim. I'm a beast next to most people, so I for one loved hearing that Victoria is much more accepting of her body nowadays. I'm still iffy about mine. I said I'm a beast! Well, then Elektra shared her issues with her body, specifically those gorgeous freckles. When I was young, I was covered in freckles just like her, but as I got older, they seemed to fade, especially on my face, but as a kid, I constantly looked dirty because of it. Now, I don't remember being teased for them, which is probably why I didn't have a problem with them in the first place, but it does break my heart when I hear someone else like Elektra say they were bullied for theirs. Here's to Elektra, poor thing. Well, and that must have opened the floodgates, because then Vanity shared her stories about being picked on at school and home for the deepness of her complexion. Thank goodness for Vanity's mom being a source of love and acceptance is all I'm saying. I also thought it was important for Vanity to talk about being the only Black cast member on season 3 and what a pressure that put on her. It's so important for Caucasians to understand what goes on in the minds of POCs, especially when they're the only ones in the room. Clearly, sweet little River Medway understood this. Bless. Here's to Vanity and River. getting schmammered. All in all, it was an important discussion for the queens to have on a global TV show. I guess Victoria was right. A lot of good came from Crystal calling her fat. And then it was time for the runway. Ru looked stunning this week in her metallic pinstripe sheath and volumized wig, finally. Joining Michelle this week at the judges' table was the hilariously punny Alan Carr and the return of this week's choreographer, Oti Mabuse. First up, Draggaton. This was a bit of a train wreck for me. Everyone seemed frantic and out of step for the most part. The standouts for me were Kitty Scott-Claus, River Medway, and Crystal Versace. And since they were all on the same team, the Ballbusters were clearly the winning team for me. I want to give kudos to Charity Case. I thought she did a great job fitting in because I didn't recognize her at all. Too bad she had such a time keeping up with the other queens is all I'm saying. Wasn't graceful. And God bless Victoria because she certainly stood out sitting on that chair, and not in a good way. Mind you, when I exercise, I like to remain seated too. Anyone else? Oh, and then it was time for the runway. Category is Red Carpet Showstoppers. Theresa May was first, and I just hated this runway, I'm so sorry to say. There was nothing about this that said red carpet, if you ask me. Finger don't for Theresa, which is too bad because red carpet was my drag queen name in high school. Electra Fence was next, and I just hated this outfit as well. It didn't say red carpet. It said Joan Crawford after her morning toilette. She's too short to be covered up by so much fabric, that poor Electra. Her skirt practically tripped her up, it was so long. Finger don't for Electra. Thank God for Vanity Milan. Her lavender fantasy was stunning. I just wish she'd worn a wig with better styling, but still, finger do for Vanity. I have only one word for Kitty Scott-Claus. Gasp. This was the best Marilyn Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend look of any Drag Race runway to date. It's too bad she didn't sew the dress to that corset, but still, finger do for Kitty. There were only two things I didn't like about Crystal's runway. Her boobs. They distracted me from the utter perfection of her eleganza. The dress, the face, and that wig. Now that's how you do a short do. Seriously. Finger do for Crystal. I was so impressed by River's runway this week too. You would never have guessed from this look that she had one of the worst runways last week. Finger do for River Medway. Seriously, well done. I didn't hate Veronica's runway, but I didn't love it. The best part of it was that wig. She looked stunning. So, finger do for Ronnie. Charity Case was next, and I have to say, I admired her for doing a glam look. It was a little too Sunset Boulevard for me, but I love orange and I love fringe. So, finger do for Miss Case. Did anyone else think she looked a little like Sharon Needles? Just me? Ella Viday's runway was one of the only true red carpet looks for me. She looks stunning. I could totally see her going to the Oscars in this, so finger do for Ella. Scarlett Harlot looks stunning as well, even though the look was a tad simple, but sometimes we say it best when we say nothing at all. Finger do for Scarlett. I have to admit, I was a little disappointed in Victoria Scone's runway, and not because she was wearing sneakers. I just thought the cut of that gown wasn't very flattering on her. I wish the neckline had followed the chevron of that fabric pattern to give us a bit more skin. As it was, she was looking a little swallowed up by it all, which is one of the few times you'll ever hear me complain about being swallowed up. Just saying. Sadly, that's a finger don't for Miss Vicky. And then it was time for the judges' critiques. Firstly, Theresa May, River Medway, Ella Viday, Scarlett Harlot, and Victoria Scone were safe. So they frigged off to the Untucked Lounge right quick, I'll tell you what. Electra was first on the chopping block, and boy did she get chopped. Oti commented on how out of step she was during the challenge. Her exuberance had her a beat or two ahead of the other queens, while Alan Carr wanted to know why she'd come to the runway dressed as a wizard. He thought her runway was more suited to the category come as a gay Star Wars character than red carpet. I love that. I have to tell you, that was so funny. Vanity Milan was next, and everyone agreed that they were distracted by her orange hair during the challenge. Keeping on theme, Michelle wished she'd had another wig on top of the one she wore down the runway to build it up, and Oti wished She covered her black corset with fabric closer to her skin tone. Ru commented that she felt Vanity was holding herself back, and sadly, Vanity agreed. Everyone was super pleased by Kitty's performance in the Maxi Challenge, and as much as Michelle loved her runway, she was distracted by the black corset as well. Ru felt Kitty could have gone a little bigger with her wig. I wish somebody had said that to Ru last week. Crystal was another judge's fave, even in a short wig, but Michelle pointed out that even though that wig was short, it was smart and finished her look off perfectly. But as perfect as it was, Michelle wanted to see some of Crystal's crunchy bits. OT was particularly impressed by Crystal's journey to the performance. Crystal was definitely the one who had the most improving to do, and OT was impressed by the work she put in. Here's to Crystal. Veronica Green was next, and all the judges were more than impressed by her performance in the Maxi Challenge, although Michelle wasn't as impressed by her runway dress. Thank God for that wig is all I'm saying. Finally, Charity Case was next. Ru loved the color of her runway, but wished it had more shape to it. As for her performance in the Maxi Challenge, Alan Carr thought she was underwhelming, while OT agreed that she seemed overwhelmed in the challenge. But at least she looked like she was having a good time. Maybe she drinks. Back in the Untucked lounge, speaking of drinking, the safe queens were mostly grateful to be safe. Victoria certainly was. I think that's the first time any queen's been safe after not wearing heels down the runway. Seriously. Ella was disappointed not to have done better, especially with all her training and experience in musical theater. But to be honest, I don't remember anything she did in the challenge, which is too bad because she seemed to put the blame on her teammates. Victoria thought River was going to be in the top, but after last week, River was more than happy to be safe. And then the rest of the queens entered the workroom. Mostly everyone, including Crystal, seemed to be surprised to hear that Crystal was in the top. But kudos to Veronica for commending her on the work Crystal put into the challenge. Kitty was chuffed to report that she was a judge's fave this week as well, but Elektra and Charity both felt they'd gotten the week's worst critiques. Everyone seemed surprised to hear that Vanity was in the bottom as well, and she was obviously taking that news personally and hard. Clearly, the judges were seeing things the other queens weren't. Back on the runway, Ru announced that Crystal was this week's winner. Again! Well, let the hate from the other queens begin is all I'm saying. In the bottom was Elektra, Charity, and Vanity. Sounds like members of a girl group, doesn't it? But, surprise, surprise, Charity was safe, and it was Elektra and Vanity that were up for elimination. This was an interesting lip sync to end people's moving on up. Right away, the queens ditched the elements of their runway that would be getting in their way. Elektra took off that terrible skirt, but I almost wish she hadn't. I hate her hip pads. They're too big for her frame, and she wears them too low. It makes her legs look about 2 inches long, I'm just saying. Vanity got rid of her delicate, I'm going to call it a pashmina, but I know that's the wrong term. And she hitched up her skirt immediately. I was worried for Elektra. But to be honest, as good as Vanity was, from all her talk, I was really expecting better. Elektra didn't disappoint. She gave us her one-woman Cirque du Soleil, but again, it seemed frantic and desperate. I felt that Vanity gave us a true performance, even though Elektra's leap off the stage into the splits was impressive. Didn't Ru tell the queens once not to leave the stage during a lip sync? Isn't that the Mimi India rule? So it was no surprise to me that Vanity, Shantae, and Elektra sashayed. What was a surprise was Ru calling Victoria forward to talk about her knee. You could literally hear everybody's rear ends clench. It was not good. Ru told Vicky that they were sending her to the doctor, and depending on what the diagnosis was, would determine her ability to continue in the competition. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Now that's a cliffhanger. What do you think? Of course, my fingerdoos are crossed for Miss Vicky, but if there's one thing we can all agree on where Drag Race is concerned, they don't take injuries lightly. Do you think she'll be able to continue? How about that lip sync? Did Vanity deserve to be there? Should it have been Charity instead? Either way, it seemed like Crystal was right in giving Elektra that sticker because, well, she was the next queen to sashay away. And what about Crystal Versace? That's her second win in 2 weeks. Was she better than both Ronnie and Kitty, or did she distract the judges with those bodacious tatas? Will she continue the trend by snagging a third win next week? All we can do is tune into RuPaul's Drag Race UK Season 3 next week to see how it all plays out. And when you're done, you come on back and you see me so you and I can compare notes. Now, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And while you're down there, check out my links in the description box for ways you can help me by supporting this channel. Until next week, miss me! Mwah. Seriously. Such an interesting episode this week. They covered so many topics. I'm really glad that Vanity talked about being the only person of color in a room. I remember when I was young, we had a black kid in our school, and I noticed that everyone seemed to act one way to his face and then one way when he wasn't around. Like sometimes they would say something and then look and see if he was around. And I remember at that age, it bothered me. And poor Victoria. She's going home. The minute I saw her not being able to stand on the runway, it was Eureka all over again. She's, I mean, I'll be surprised and happy if she doesn't go home, but knees are tough. She went down hard, and not in the sexy way. Seriously. I haven't gone down hard in the sexy way in years. No.